So look, good morning, everybody. Some very early mornings, but good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of A Life More Extraordinary, and the first one of 2021. For those who haven't been to one of our shows before, we thought we'd just give a little bit of background and context to what on earth this is actually sort of all about, and kind of set the scene a little bit before we then introduce our panelists and start digging into some of the discussion with them. As Sarah said, there's a chat box there, so please do put any questions at all that you're thinking, or any comments at all in there, and we'll sort of pull upon those at different times throughout the show. This all started for Sarah and I sort of back in kind of roughly this time last year, which seems both just yesterday and a million years ago at the same time. Something that's always been really, really important to Sarah and I is the idea of purpose, and being able to understand and find your own purpose, whatever that might be. And we were finding that when the COVID sort of pandemic hit and when lockdown then came on, a lot of people were finding themselves in situations for various reasons where purpose was becoming more and more important to them, but also quite a challenge and almost this kind of mysterious, ethereal kind of concept that was kind of a struggle to really get your hands around. And this was all happening at a time when, for some, there was sort of more opportunity, and for others, there was an incredible amount of challenge, and some really quite serious challenge, whether it be sort of with health or finances or sort of family and friends. And even sort of the language of sort of the pandemic and the last year has been really quite negative. Things like restrictions, lockdown, quarantine, pandemic. These aren't particularly sort of nice terms, and yet they're things that we hear day after day, and can be quite challenging. But we thought that sort of within this situation, within this context, within this global sort of pandemic, if this can't act as a catalyst to help us to find a new way forward and to create a more extraordinary life for ourselves and our communities, then really there's nothing else that's going to.
Yeah, and the other thing that we really thought, actually, along with kind of getting hacked off with some of the terminology and things that kind of are emerging through this fog, with things like, you know, new normal. Who wanted normal anyway? You've probably heard me say that before, but it's just like that sort of challenged us and thought we can probably do better than that. And we were also kind of realizing from our own networks and beyond and things we were reading, there are some incredible stories out there, but there's also real reality here that needs an honest conversation and looking properly at this work-life collide and what's really going on here and how can we kind of, you know, take that beyond. So yeah, it's, you know, it's got huge ambitions and also kind of very down to earth. Let's just have a chat about it. So really welcome. Thank you for joining us. I don't want to waste too much time telling you what it is, because we've got some amazing people here as well who are going to sort of like share some of their stories too. So I'd love to firstly introduce you to Lindsay Kohler. Lindsay, hi, how are you?
Hi, Sarah. I'm good. It's great to be here.
And kind of, do you want to just give us a kind of quick sum up of kind of who you are, what you do? And I've got a really, you know, I think there's a very exciting extra secret about you in lockdown as well, isn't there?
There is. We'll get to it in due time. I'm Lindsay, as I said. I'm a behavioral scientist, and I specialize in motivation and health. And I started my career in benefits communication back in America, where the main topic that they communicate about is health. And I couldn't understand why just telling people to eat better and stop smoking and drink less and exercise more wasn't actually effective in changing behavior. Surprise, surprise. So I found myself looking toward different fields for inspiration on how to move the needle. And that's what drew me to behavioral science. To the point where I decided to do a career change in my mid-30s, go back to school, do this properly, and then come back into the employee engagement space to just really help make a difference in our lives. So yeah, a lot of good, I think, tidbits to share today.
Great. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. And we've got two gentlemen joining us who are both special individuals, but also an awesome double act. Reuben and Oliver, do you guys mind introducing yourselves a little bit as well, please?
Yeah. Rubes, you want me to start? Yeah, alphabetical order and all that. Go for it.
Oh, all right, sweet.
Love
Ladies
it.
first and all that. Cool. You're right. I'm Ollie. I am the co-host and co-founder of a little podcast called Professional Patients with Reuben, as mentioned. I'm a kidney transplant patient, kind of been doing everything to do with renal transplants and bladders and hospitals and that kind of life for all my life, which is 25 years now. I'm at kind of like getting ready for a second transplant, getting ready over the next couple of years, which sounds like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long. And yeah, kind of we set up, I won't say too much so Rubes can actually talk, but set up Professional Patients as kind of a realistic insight as to what a transplant patient, what life as a transplant patient is like, instead of what you might see on certain TV shows where there's no consequences of not taking medication. We kind of talk about side effects of medication and why you need to take it, and you know, all the goods and the bads of a transplant, basically. So, yeah.
But we
Oh,
also,
you're very welcome.
I'm Ruben, by the way. I'll jump in. We also give all the juicy bits. My fiance is in the call, so I'll be careful with what I say, but we will talk about relationships and just other things, like, you know, because growing up with kidney problems affects lots of things, you know, career, schooling, all of these things. So yeah, it's tried to just give you a bit more of a down-to-earth approach. So that's that. As far as me personally, I'm an actor, I'm a drama teacher, and I do some voiceover work and things like that myself. I'm 30 years old, which yeah, I don't feel. I feel a lot younger. Well, I act a lot younger, should I say.
I feel like 30 is young. Stop
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay, sorry. Not to
Okay.
throw, yeah. And I often throw myself under the bus, and that's me. So
No, that's cool. That's great. Thanks, guys. It's really good to have you two with us, and really interesting to hear that story of like the fact that you're both shielding, but really getting yourselves out there with kind of your podcast. And our final panelist for today is Sphinx, Sphinx Patterson. I mean, move over Joe Wicks, move over Mr. Motivator. Sphinx, do you want to take yourself off mute and say hello and tell us who you are, to give us a quick upsum of your story?
I might need you off mute, Sphinx.
That's it.
Okay, there it is. Right,
Perfect.
nice one.
Perfect.
Right, I'm hi everybody. I'm Sphinx Patterson, a humble fitness instructor. Used to teach for a lot of different gyms around London, and then I found myself through this pandemic having to take my services online, which is a long story which I can relate later on, but it's a matter of having to adapt to change, and that's it really. I've been teaching for a while, using my experience now in a different way to help people the only way I know how.
Great, thank you. And yeah, that's really great to have you with us. We really want to start digging into this kind of idea, really, of how has it been for you, kind of what have you been going through the lockdown, but also what's really going on here, and how do we start breaking this cycle? The Groundhog Day. I mean, you know, happy new blur, happy new year, happy, you know, really, you know, and that kind of feeling that's going on around us. So let's dig into that then, kind of, you know, Reuben, Ollie, new beginnings, podcast, shut at home. What was going on through lockdown for you guys?
I mean,
Oops, go for it.
Yeah, sorry, mate. Feel free to jump in and cut me off.
Oh, well, don't worry.
Thank you. We've been speaking about doing something because Ollie, he didn't mention, but he does a lot of kind of production stuff and directing, all sorts of bits and pieces. And I think we've known each other since birth. Like, we were actually, when I had my first transplant, Ollie was in hospital as well. So we've literally, you know, we're very close in that sense as well. And growing up, we've just always been quite like-minded in our approach to health, our own personal issues. And I think we've just been speaking about maybe doing sketches and things like that. And then we thought, you know what? We both listen to podcasts. Is it something that we, you know, just like a long form podcast, and we both have a chat and might not even have to put it out there? Like, Ollie, do you remember we were just saying, you know, might not share it with people, and then
we ran out of excuses, basically. I think that about sums it up. We kept pushing it back. COVID came along, messed it up for everyone. We were like, yeah, we might as well do it, have a laugh, see what happens. Turns out actually people kind of enjoy it. So
I love the idea that COVID kind of messed it up for everyone and put you guys on air. That's
Basically,
brilliant.
yeah, it kind of put us on the spot, and we kind of had to just. For me personally, I won't talk on behalf of Reuben, but for me, it was something to aim for, like a project that I enjoy doing. One, we kind of treat it as a nice catch up, every 2 weeks kind of thing when we do record, and then it's just a nice, what we're going to talk about. Okay, cool. And we like the idea of it not being an interview. The podcast is more of, we like the idea that if you are listening to the podcast, you're kind of sitting in a bar or a cafe with us and having a chat with us and listening into what we're talking about and having a nose. Which is why, if you listen to the podcast, you'll hear me dropping my cup of tea every time and stuff like that and messing up. But yeah, I think it's just a nice thing to do. Keeps me going anyway.
We are called the professional patients, but it's a tongue-in-cheek reference as opposed to professional patients.
Yeah.
Professional patients, but not professional podcasters. So.
Basically.
That's it.
On that, and this kind of links then to something that Sphinx actually brought up in his introduction. So it'd be good to sort of to ask Sphinx. You mentioned about that idea of adapting to change or needing to adapt to the change. And I think something that's come from Ruben and Ollie there was that idea of like, well, actually, kind of. There's no excuses. We haven't, we not really got a choice here. We're gonna do it. But for you, Sphinx, it was a little bit more. I don't know. I guess in a way, a bit more serious in a way because it was about your livelihood.
It was a complete transformation. It was a complete rip out. I mean, I'm used to corporate collapse. I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but I used to work for a company called Lehman Brothers. I mentioned that to Sarah.
Yeah, you're allowed to say that.
All right.
Well, you just have.
And I was.
Yeah, they don't exist anymore.
I was there on that Monday morning when everybody was walking out of the building in their cardboard boxes, and I thought, what's happening here? So cut a long story short. After the collapse of that big corporation, which I never thought could ever happen in my lifetime, I thought, now I'm going to start to work for a lot of different gyms. I'm going to spread myself thin. So if the eventuality happened that one of those gyms collapsed or I lost the class here and there, it would sort of like take up the slack. I was working for about 13 or 14 different establishments, so traveling all around London, doing what I love to do. So here comes 2020, April, lockdown, pandemic, all the gyms close at once. Can you imagine? It was like someone ripped the floor from beneath me. It was a total annihilation, basically, for my livelihood. So I had to adapt.
So you'd made that kind of safety net of a plan and thought that's really clever, and then suddenly COVID obviously came along.
It was crazy. It was crazy. For the first 2 weeks of lockdown, to be honest with you, I haven't really told many people this, but I was in a complete trance. I was walking around in a daze. I was just going for long walks, wondering what I was going to do with my life, because everything that I ever loved to do and believed in has suddenly collapsed with this lockdown. I'd never experienced it before. But then I realized that everybody, not only me, all my fellow instructors, everybody in the world was in the same situation. And one thought came to me, and this thought, it was what changed the whole course of my life, in a sense. The thought came to me, what would Nelson Mandela do in this situation? What would Nelson Mandela do in this situation? What would Muhammad Ali have done in this situation? What would Winston Churchill do in this situation? And all these great, icons came back to me. Even Bruce Lee. What would Bruce Lee do in this situation? So all these great iconic figures came back to me, and that thought spurred me on. It actually made me quite angry with myself, actually, because I realized that I had certain gifts, I had certain talents which I'd developed over many years of teaching. But the thing is that how was I going to help people with my talents in a new way? What could I do? I thought of doing classes outdoor in the parks and stuff. I actually did try a few outdoor classes, and we got chased away a few times by the park officials. But then I reached out to people I knew who were doing stuff online, like my friend Richard Playfair, who's running a business teaching people how to teach courses online. So I asked him about various things, and I started to teach. My first class, I remember, stop me if I'm talking too much, but
oh, we will.
We will in a bit.
I talked to my first class. I talked to a lady who I'd known for a long time in the gym, at a gym in Swiss Cottage. I taught a yoga class from my mobile phone, from my bedroom floor, doing yoga on my bedroom floor to this lady who I'd known for a long time. And at first it was a bit like, I had to use different cues with no hands on, obviously. I had to be very observant and very, very vocal and very sort of like vigilant in my cues. But it seemed to work, and it picked up, and I developed more and more skills coming from that. One class changed to 2 classes, 2 classes transformed to 4 classes, 4 became 6, and it just escalated by word of mouth. I've never marketed my services, just escalated by word of mouth, and people found out what I was doing. And I'm investing in a lot of equipment, electronic equipment to teach, and it's just gone from strength to strength, really.
Yeah, that is a great story, and I think that's that interesting journey through trying to be prepared, trying to be resilient beforehand. Something happening that actually just I don't think anybody was prepared for. But then and then having that period, you talked about 2 weeks there, about being actually I'm in a bit of a daze here. I'm kind of struggling here before then being able to move out. And so it'd be interesting to sort of ask Lindsay from. I guess there's two kind of questions to you, if it's okay to sort of bombard you. But one is from kind of that sort of academic, scientific point of view, that kind of journey through change. Is there anything that's from your sort of side that you can pick up on there and help us explore? But then also your own story, like how did you kind of find the past sort of 9 months or so?
It's only been 9 months.
So, well, however, I mean, do you know what? I don't know.
That should tell you how I feel, Oliver.
Yeah.
So the first question, it's an interesting one. I get asked a lot about change and our reactions to it. And, change is very emotional. But the line that I always go back to, and maybe somewhat controversial, especially when you're trying to give advice and be empathetic, and this might sound incredibly unempathetic, but humans are really adaptable, as Sphinx's story just showed us. And at the end of the day, we get over it and we return to sort of our baseline levels of happiness. So whether like something great happens or something really awful happens, because of sort of our innate nature and resiliency, over time, we kind of get back to whatever our normal baseline is. So anytime, I see someone going through a hard time, I know there's that old adage, this too shall pass, and, time heals all wounds, but it's actually true. And I find that really hopeful when I feel down, which, like many of you, I definitely have during this lockdown, which sort of, I guess, gets to the second part of your question. How am I doing in this lockdown? I had a bit of practice with the whole remote working. So I spent a year, and this was only about a year ago, and looking back on it, I cannot believe the delta between my life then and my life now, but I spent a year commuting between London and San Francisco. So I decided to keep a full-time job in San Francisco, but go to grad school full-time in London. And so I had a very large carbon footprint for all of 2019, where every 6 to 8 weeks I was flying between the cities, which can you
the reason
even
we've got to all stay still now? Is that why we've all got to stay in to make up for your carbon footprint?
Either that or I was patient zero and we don't know about it.
Okay.
I mean, can you even imagine? I think I had 22 flights between January and August of 2019. And then when I landed in London in September, I said, okay, for 6 months, no travel. I'm going to stay in, get my energy up. And then starting in my 6 months was up March 6th of 2020. I had all these vacations planned, all these things planned. And I think that's what a lot of you felt too, is you had like this idea of a future, and then it felt like it got ripped away, that like a year is missing. But I guess what that experience taught me was I am pretty good working remote, but I'm not good working inside my house. There was, Sarah, I just read an article on the BBC this morning that talked about how coffee shops do actually make you more creative. So apparently the ambient noise, the distractions, seeing other people working reminds you what you were there to do. So while I'm okay with remote working, I'm really not okay with home working. And I think those two concepts are really different. And for a lot of people,
really true.
Yeah, for a lot of people right now, they're one and the same, but they're not. They're very different.
And I was remote working before this, but I was remote working in coffee shops or at the gym afterwards. And, you know, well, actually, there was I didn't really go to the gym. It's just got a really good coffee bar, but really good smoothies. And great Wi-Fi. But it's that, isn't it? It's that being able to work in other places was the secret to remote working, especially, you know, away from the children. And I mean, you know, a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old. Oh, and we introduced a puppy as well at Christmas time, guys. But, you know, just that is not your ideal working environment. But being around other creative people, seeing people working, it's bound to trigger you, isn't it? It's great. And a really decent coffee, you know, to keep the mind alive. But we've got some, really good conversations and some questions going on as well in the chat here around this kind of, how do you keep motivated? So I think that kind of like lends next to kind of, you know, Sphinx, people are asking, how do you keep people motivated for home workouts? You know, are you seeing different energy levels there? And then similarly, kind of, you know, with Reuben and Oliver, you know, Reuben, I know you've got a treadmill, I believe, at home, you know, and things like that, which is not just display use only nowadays.
No,
you know, you said you're being able to make time for your well-being, aren't you?
Yeah, I think it's because I've just found that I've got more hours in the day. My work schedule is very different. With speech and drama, it comes in kind of certain points, and then I think, like I mentioned before, like I think it's all about routine for me. That's something that I've lacked for a long time, I think, as a starving artist and being an actor. And it was very difficult, I think, for me to just wake up and be like, you know what, I need to start the day right, even if it's just something as simple as making a coffee. This might sound really outlandish, but I've, you know, like sometimes just waking up and having that one thing that you do every morning without fail, obviously brushing your teeth, but I think just incorporating treadmill. It starts off like once every 2 weeks, if that, and then now I've tried to get into once every 3 days, which is a real push for me because I'm lazy and I much prefer sitting on the sofa or watching Netflix or whatever. But at least it's one extra day every so often that I wouldn't have done X amount of months ago or whatever, you know? So yeah, I think also, I think I mentioned after having I won't go into that just yet. I won't go into that yet.
How about Ollie Crawley? How about you? Again, I think one of the key topics that keeps coming up here is that idea of motivation, and how do you find that motivation and enthusiasm?
I'm more of a kind of a personal goal kind of guy. I don't give myself huge personal goals. Because I've spent huge amounts of time in hospital, this kind of lockdown isn't really new to me. This is actually quite nice for me. I'm in a lockdown with my family, and I've got my guitar and this Mac, so I can edit and work instead of being stuck in a hospital side room and, you know, being jabbed and prodded 24/7. So this is quite nice to me. But I'll set myself little goals like, okay, cool. Yes. So today I'm going to use the rowing machine because I'm not a runner, because I'm not that kind of guy. I can't be bothered, but I'll row instead, or I'll do my own personal workout. Or, you know, at the moment, I'm kind of aiming to do 3 small workouts a day and to get an edit done a week kind of thing. It's not a huge thing, but that's what keeps me going and keeps me motivated. And then with the podcast of Reuben, my motivation is, okay, let's get an episode out at least once a month, which again, it isn't a huge thing, but it's a realistic thing to aim for.
Yeah,
it's just small goals and trying your best to keep in the routine, but then keeping in mind that if you don't reach that goal or you don't keep to that routine, it's not the end of the world. You know, you're only human. Don't beat yourself up about it. You just pick yourself up again, have a day, just relax. It's not an easy time. Everyone's struggling. I don't know anyone who's doing well. It's not an easy time for anyone, and just do your best. That's really all you can do.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear, isn't it? And I think you're getting lots of people agreeing with you as well in the chat here. So Claire Hodgson, thank you. You're saying I completely agree. Starting the day right makes a massive difference. Can set the tone of how you feel. And then also sometimes just mixing it up. I'm also not a runner, but I am currently doing Couch to 5K because it's been an excellent way to escape the house.
Exactly.
And so now I am not really becoming a runner. Anyone who sees me knows that. But, it is that kind of, you can start new habits and things like that. And I'm a better person if I've done that run at 8 in the morning. And Joy here as well. I mean, I think this is really relevant as well, especially with lockdown 3. Joy, the realization this week that I'm better off starting the day off as a mum as opposed to a teacher or an employee. So Joy, do you want to just, I don't know if you want to just say anything about that. I mean, I think that is something a lot of people are kind of saying in the chat that they agree, this sort of massive juggle.
Yeah, sure. I'm definitely finding this lockdown the hardest out of all of them so far. We've got twins that have just turned 5. And basically I was finding that if I quickly rushed in to try and get a bit of the school home learning ticked off, or started off, oh my God, I've got to get that project plan out, otherwise the day's in trouble, then I've just got a whole household of stressed people. Whereas if I sit down and play a game or read a story or have a dance around the kitchen with the kids first, then they're a bit happier, then I can get something else done, and then we sort of go back to normal kind of family balancing after that. And yeah, it just all came to a head on Monday, and it's been a lot better this week so far, doing a mom thing first.
Yeah, really pleased to hear that. And yeah, I've recently just bought this kitchen is for dancing poster as well, and that has really helped us through. And I never knew Dobble, which was a Christmas stocking filler gift, was going to save my life, because my 4-year-old is amazing at it. It's a matching pairs game, and it just brings a little bit of 3 minutes of joy when you need it. Thank you, that's really great. Thank you for sharing. Everyone's saying totally agree. Sphinx, let's dig into that a bit, because obviously you're dealing with people who kind of are ready to get motivated, like in your classes, but do you see different levels of motivation? How do you sort of like keep people well?
Definitely. It goes like this. In the gym, people, there were different kinds of people that came to my classes. Some people really came to be thrashed. They wanted that sort of like that tough workout, and I was able to deliver. But now what I found is that people you can't really give people that sort of work. People don't need that all the time. I've actually more got in touch with my softer side during this lockdown, then delivering more kind of mind body, kind of more uplifting mindfulness type workouts. I've always been into yoga, but I've found that people are more responsive to that sort of workout now. I mean, you'll always get the hardcore people that want a hard workout, but there's also another side. People need to be uplifted and stimulated in a softer sort of way, I think, sort of motivated in a softer way. What I found, it was interesting what Ollie said, just little mini goals. What I found in my case, what I found is that I get into a habit. Say, for example, I wake up and I'll do my yoga stretches. And if I don't do my yoga stretches and my short meditation for the day, that day is not the same. I'd be interested to find out, as a motivational expert, what Lindsay has to say about this. But what I found is that just establishing habits. For instance, I could tell someone, wake up and then give them the homework to do 50 push-ups. You can do blocks of 10, 5 times 10, 50 push-ups. But if I say, right, you've got to wake up and do 2 push-ups, that becomes an achievable goal for a lot of people. So it swings and roundabouts, really. It swings and roundabouts. I could never say that motivation is a constant thing. It fluctuates, it changes. according to what people need. And at this time, I think people need a softer touch.
Yeah,
that's an interesting point. Lindsay, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, motivation is really a mixture of three things, right? It's our belief in our ability to do something. So that's why I love having someone do 2 push-ups instead of 50. Let's start small. It's a belief that whatever we're about to do is going to have some sort of impact. So in this case, it's, what is the impact this activity is going to have? Is it going to set my day right? Is it going to finally see that 6-pack? Is it going to have more energy to play with my kids? And the third thing is a reward. So we don't do anything unless we have a sweet spot of those 3 things. So ability, impact, and reward. But to your point, motivation fluctuates, and I think it fluctuates as well with energy because, it's all goal-directed behavior, but you have to have the energy to do it, even if you have the motivation. So I think that that's the part of the equation that maybe gets overlooked a lot as we talk so much about motivation and, do this and do that and do that. And we forget like the energy levels. And so I think in lockdown too, energy levels are probably lower across the board for, I imagine, a variety of reasons. So those of you with kids, homeschooling and, taking care of a family when you're all in the same household is probably very tiring. When we have less new stimuli, we get bored. And when we get bored, we sleep more. So again, our energy, but not like the restful sleep, like the, I'm going to go to sleep because there's nothing better to do sleep, which then you wake up from that and you're more tired than when you took the nap. And then it ruins your actual restorative sleep at night. So I just think that's why I love some of the tips that everyone else has shared so far about little habits and routines, because I think that's where you start to get in those good behaviors that create the energy that you need to make progress toward your goals, no matter how motivated you are.
Yeah, and I think there's okay, so I mean, you're one of my favorite people right now because you wrote that feature that said it's okay not to, don't get too embarrassed. It's, it does change. I'm quite fickle, but Lindsay, you wrote that feature that said it's okay not to have a lockdown hobby. So, you kind of gave people permission not to have to feel motivated, super motivated all the time. But you also, similarly found time for your own sort of extra hobbies and things. So it's not just, and I have to sneak this in, don't I? Because we know we've got 15 minutes left. But I'm going to just say you did have a hobby, and it's like kind of, it's finding different things, isn't it, that motivate you as well. So not always just doing the worthy. So in the chat, for example, lots of people saying, does yawning count as yoga? I don't know, Sphinx, does it? But it's like kind of, some people are really, really struggling with this idea of motivation. And Sphinx is going to sort of take us through a couple of minutes shortly. But yeah, what do you think? I mean, kind of people that are really kind of like just this kind of idea even of exercise. How are you getting people there, Sphinx?
Here's one thing I'll tell people to do. Try to do one thing each day, whether it's exercise or whether it's something else unrelated to exercise that you don't want to do. Do one thing that you don't want to do, and that will give you motivation. That over time will create a habit of giving you motivation to do other things that you might not want to do or you don't have the urge to do. One thing, like say my thing is have a cold shower. I'll wake up, if it's 0 degrees outside, I'll have a cold shower. Yeah. If it's -2, I'll have a cold shower. And I've done it for years. I've done it, I'm not sure how it started, but I found out that a rugby squad that I followed were doing it, were having this thing, and they called it cold thermogenesis. So I said, let me try it. And also, since I've been doing it, I've been finding that it travels through a lot of yoga schools as well. They will have some of the yogis will have cold showers.
Yeah, and I think that's what
So
people are
just
saying,
something as
fresh
simple
air,
like
cold
that.
showers, that kind of makes a difference. We're getting comments there in the chat. We're also getting a lot of love for you, Sphinx, and people saying that you really have made the difference for them in lockdown. So, you know, just showing up for your class, the fact that you've been hugely motivating for them, getting through your half-hour sessions. Really, Susan says, Sphinx seems to truly pick up on my mood and trains me and motivates me, you know, and that's kind of, you know, that's the balance, isn't it? You're having to reach people through the video screens to, you know, where they're at.
Different mode of communication.
Great. And so I did tease it, Lindsay. I do want to get onto other hobbies and kind of doing things that kind of also motivate you. So, you know, even though you said it's okay not to have a hobby, you have been doing something quite different in lockdown as well, haven't you, beyond the day job?
I have been. Well, first of all, I've got to plug it. I'm writing a book, which is how Sarah and I know each other. She's one of my fabulous interviewees, and it'll be published in early Q2. But I was finding that all I was doing all day was writing for work, writing for Forbes, writing this book. And I love to write, but I just needed like a different outlet, I think, to stay motivated. Again, it's back to reward, and I wasn't finding the other stuff as rewarding. And I'd had this idea for a while around a screenplay, horror comedy. And a friend and I just started doing it, and we're just about finished, and we're looking to shop it soon. And I don't want to give too many details since I can't make you all sign NDAs, but I know Sarah's going to make me tell you what it's about. So
I think you need to sort of definitely share the title and the main subject matter, and then we're all there with you.
It's about killer jellyfish.
Of course it is.
Sure.
And wait for it. It is called Are You Ready for This Jelly? And this will be coming to screens hopefully early next year. Again, we're just about ready to shop it. So mum's the word. We don't want the idea getting out. So I'm gonna hold.
I don't think they're ready for this jelly. I mean, I think that's an amazing, you know, it just gives me joy knowing that that's what someone's done with their lockdown, that we have a horror comedy going to emerge from this. So thank you. That is really cool. Everyone look out for that, because that is pretty much an exclusive, that is going to be the big hit for later this year.
We've got, sorry, we've got about 10 minutes left. And so if anyone does have any questions, please share them either in the chat or sort of put your hand up and wave madly, and we can have you speak live. But one of the things, whilst we could give people a chance to sort of to think of those questions, one of the things that I personally have found useful, and it was kind of linked to a question or a comment I think that someone else put up earlier about the idea of not necessarily trying to be like the perfect teacher or the perfect parent, you know, all these kind of things that so many people are having to juggle at the moment. And that really resonates sort of for me. And one of the things I've found that I've started doing is actually writing on my hand. Bizarre, I don't think the camera can pick it up, but it says, be patient, breathe, and smile.
Aww.
Because one of the things I'm having to do a lot of is sort of juggle lots of different things. Some of them work, some of them family. And I definitely want to be better as a professional. I want to be a better teacher for my daughter and all that kind of stuff. But none of it's really going to happen unless I can just focus on these things. And so, you know, when I'm trying to say, for the love of daughter, I love you, but 2 + 2 is not bananas. We've been through this. That's not actually that's not going to help her in any way, shape or form. And me desperately trying to search for being a better teacher in that moment is not really going to work either. But if I can just focus on just smile, breathe, be patient, then actually that moment of tension kind of passes, and whatever we're going to do in the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, weeks, stands a much better chance of being effective if in that moment I don't lose my temper, I don't get frustrated and go, well, I think it looks like university's off the cards, bye. So that's one of the things that I've been finding is a little technique actually, just to kind of help myself, just and literally have it in front of me so I can keep seeing going, oh, be patient. But it'd be interesting, like, it'd be interesting, any there's
people
a question
are saying about patience interesting, but also perfect is coming up a lot in the chat. So kind of that thing, the idea that perfection isn't 100% necessary, you know. And actually Paul Lindsay, you had a really nice mantra at the moment, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, something I've been thinking about. I've been nodding along to a lot of what people have been saying. This has been a kind of really humbling experience in a way, because, you know, I work as a project manager and it's all about, you know, delivery and rah-rah and getting it done. And, you know, you come up hard time and again with the kids against the reality that that's just not the way they want to be. And, you know, the heartbreaking thing is that I remember in the beginning of this third lockdown, they just wanted their play. And, you know, I was just so obsessed with getting through it. And I just, it's shaming in a way, mildly shaming. And then you know, you give yourself a break. And I really loved what somebody was saying earlier. It's just that we have to kind of, Joy Fabricius was saying, it was just, you know, you got to let go of it. You've got to be in the moment a bit, which is really super hard for me. And, you know, something Sphinx was saying as well is that if you start the day, for me, I found the habit of starting the day in a particular way. It works really well with my little OCD part of my brain. I set myself up a lot more. And the kids, you know, we're slowly getting there. Our 7-year-old was refusing point blank to do any schooling, which really was freaking me out just beyond belief.
Yeah.
Because there's no delivery in that, is there? I mean, you know. But we got there, we're getting there. And, you know, it's so lovely. This is so good just to kind of all be going, oh God, this is really messy and crazy. And, you know, hilariously, my mate was having a terrible time, said, I think I'm going to do dry January. And without even thinking about it, I said, okay, I'll do it with you. And then I went, what the hell have I done?
Yeah, I know. It's so casually said and then absolutely impossible.
Oh God. Yeah. So, you know, it's just been hilarious. I think, you know, the idea of writing a screenplay I think the jelly thing's going to win awards, but
jelly thing's going to definitely take off.
Win awards, but the screenplay of our own lives, our own messy, chaotic Charlie Kaufman kind of little mini dialogues going on in our heads, are enough to just make me laugh sometimes. We just have to laugh at ourselves.
So your mantra, so just because it's in the chat and I think it's brilliant, never let perfect be the enemy of good, or good enough even sometimes, you know.
Yeah. Totally.
Work-life collision going on. I mean,
totally.
Great, you know, screenplays and podcasts. I've got a question here, Ollie, and so for Ollie and Reuben, saying, you know, how do you even start a podcast? I mean, was that daunting? Was that good? You know, like, were you all right with it?
Yes, to answer your question. And Ollie, go for it.
All right. Well, I'll do the tech side for starting a podcast. Just do it. Find any way to record. I think personally, the main thing is just have something that you care about and you're happy to talk about. Don't worry about growing an audience. Don't worry about anything like that. Just as long as you're happy to sit there, even if it's by yourself in a room, whatever, and just chat. Like, as long as you enjoy doing it, that should be the main thing. Don't do it because you feel you have to.
Yeah.
I think we were very passionate about sharing our stories because all of this goes beyond us. We're lucky enough to have had transplants, but there's people out there who are still waiting. There's people, you know, we're not going to be the first people, and we're definitely not going to be the last people to receive kidney transplants in our case. But, you know, it's a conversation that needs to be shared. Most importantly, Oliver Matthews has a story himself. Sorry to throw you, mate, in the situation, in the mix. But I think it just happens, and a lot of people don't really speak about it. I think from my own experience, I think also Ollie's really Oliver Crawley now, speaking about Oliver Crawley. Hello. He's very good at just naturally bringing it up in conversation and things like that. Whereas it's something that when I would talk to him as a mate, I'd find it really difficult to just be like, oh, I identify, oh, that's Reuben who's had the kidney transplant. Oh, that's Reuben who was on dialysis, or so on and so forth. So I think, I think for us at the core of it, it was just being really passionate about sharing not just our stories, but getting other people on and getting them to share their stories also. I think it's just really important. Obviously, donation, I think, is something that's very important. I also feel like I need to give Fez a shout out because he actually did have a kidney transplant in lockdown. So maybe it'd be interesting to hear his thoughts, and obviously hope you're getting on all right, mate.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Okay. There's one question actually I want to pick up on from Joy, which I think is quite interesting, and Lindsay, if you wouldn't mind getting your thoughts on this one. So when you're talking earlier about the sort of the triangle around motivation with sort of ability and impact and reward, and Joy talks around being able to assess the sort of the impact fairly easily, and the reward, yep, that's fine. But how, but it's the self-belief aspect that feels almost non-existent while life is so chaotic. So do you have any kind of tips or helpful bits around how can you channel that a little bit around self-belief a little bit more?
That's such a big question, and probably the
if you could do it in
hardest...
30 seconds, that'd be great.
Yeah, we're just going to do 30 seconds.
All right, in 30 seconds, I'm just going to give you a pep talk. That's what I'm going to do, because that will be the most effective use of time. You are awesome. You need to keep telling yourself that every single morning. Literally love talk helps. And so anytime that I'm feeling like I can't do this, I tell myself, yes, you can. You totally can. You've got this. So Joy, you've got this. You can do it.
Yeah, I think that feeling of reassurance, and because we're not interacting with people as much, that might give us that pickup as you need it, and you don't tend to get it when they're sort of scheduled in Zoom meetings and things like that. I know we've got other people in the audience. I do want to just check in. Fez, how are you doing? Are you all right? Because it was mentioned Reuben.
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm just stuck inside for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But you've had the transplant and you're recovering?
Yeah. So the first year can be a bit bumpy.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping I'm over that bump. So I'm about 6 months in now.
Cool.
So I've had a couple of setbacks, and I'm hoping things will start to settle now.
Great.
But then there's the whole C word out there, so there's that to navigate as well.
Yeah.
As well as a medical condition. So yeah.
Oh well, we all send all our very best for your recovery, and thank you for joining us and and being Reuben and Ollie for their podcast. I also just wanted to promise you, because I think it's really important now that we've got Sphinx with us as well. We probably should sort of end our time on a kind of piece of motivation. And I know that Sphinx was keen to sort of share a minute of his magic with us. So I know that everybody will be really motivated by this idea. I know that Ollie's been thinking a lot about what he should be wearing for a bit of a workout.
So spandex, is it spandex time, is it?
Yeah, so quick, we're just going to do a bit of kind of speed kind of motivation.
Right, okay. Am I on?
You are on.
Okay, right. Very quickly. In the next 2 minutes, I'm going to teach you a very quick way that you can completely change the state of your being, completely change your physiology. Now, it's all about your breathing. There's 3 parts to this breath. You're going to breathe in from your lower belly to this point, to just below your lower ribs. You're going to breathe in again from your lower ribs up into your higher ribs, and then breathe in again from your upper ribs into your throat. So you're going to breathe in through the nose like this 3 times. You're going to breathe out like this, ha, to make that sound. So watch again. I'm going to breathe in 3 times and then breathe out, ha. So let's practice that together. So breathe in. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ha, ha. Again. Ready? Go again. Breathe in. Ha, ha. But there's more. You've got to move your arms like this. 1, 2, 3. Ha. So it's 3-part breaths. It's called the yoga breath of joy. So arms 1, 2, 3, and then you say ha. Okay, can we do it together? Through the nose. Ready? Begin. Ha. 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 Okay, there's more. Fantastic. When you do it, the ha,
I'm just excited, Ginny the puppy.
When you do the ha, I promise you, if you did that for 60 seconds, you completely change the way you feel. When you do the ha, you've got to stick your tongue out like this and open your eyes wide. Ready? All together. 3, 2, 1. Ready?
Yeah.
Ha.
Oh my God.
Ha.
Yeah, my hat is making Ginny the puppy start, guys. I'm sorry.
Right, so try it, guys. Try it. Well done. Way! It's
well done, everyone. That's great.
Try it.
We've all done something fun.
Try that for 60 seconds, and I promise you, you will change the way you feel. Do it at the start of the day, preferably after your cold shower.
Made Ginny the puppy wake up, that her.
Oh.
So she just wanted to say hi. She's also really good for well-being. Thank you everybody for joining us and for your comments. I'm so sorry we didn't get to them all. We are doing these monthly. We're also doing more in-depth podcasts. So check out our website, Life More Extraordinary. We're doing in-depth podcasts and video chats with each of our guests and asking them 11 questions of living La Vida lockdown, which takes them through a quick fire round of things they're going to keep doing. But really great panelists. I really just want to thank everyone, Reuben and Ollie, Sphinx and Lindsay. Thank you for a really open conversation. Do follow us on Instagram and become part of the Life More Extraordinary community. And great to see you. This is Ginny the puppy who's been getting me through.
Have a lovely weekend, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Pleased to meet you all.
Bye.